So we're going to go ahead and jump into week 2 of Creature of Habit. Steve talked a little bit about this last week, but do any of you have any habits that you almost barely even notice they're there? Little idiosyncrasies about yourself, things that maybe you don't realize you do, but then somebody else definitely realizes you do. For me, in my household, I have this tiny little habit. I love cereal. I'm a big cereal guy. I try to go as healthy as I can with the cereal, and then the almond milk thing. See, 2016 resolutions, look at me. But I love, at the end of the day, like a nice bowl of cereal is just such a great snack at the end of the day. Is anybody with me? Any cereal fans? Yes, thank you. We're going to have revival in here. You know, post, anyone cereal fans in here, send. But I love cereal. But my wife has this tendency, just the little bitty slurping sound when I eat my cereal. It's tiny, you can't even notice it, but my wife, for whatever reason, you would think she's having a conniption fit. Like, she loses her mind. Like, the first bite of cereal I take, you can't even hear it. Like, it's not even audible, but bat ears over here can be upstairs. And she's like, quit slurping your cereal. I mean, it's just, I don't even know I do it. It's just this little idiosyncrasy that I have that drives her insane. I don't know. One of our children had this habit where he would suck his thumb, and it's really cute when they're little and they suck their thumb. But as they get older, it's like less and less cute. And they would do it, and they wouldn't even realize it. And it was just this habit that they had that would almost kind of take over and take control of their life. And in many ways, our habits are kind of like that. They take control, and they take over and kind of become autopilots in our life. And this idea of having an autopilot actually had a pretty crazy experience this past week with something that had an autopilot feature. And I'd like to share that experience with you. So go ahead and check out this video.
Now I can put it in.
Yep, whenever you're ready. There you go.
This is unbelievable.
And it will take this like ramp, and it will like keep
On its own, it's gonna. That feels so bizarre.
Yeah.
And it's slowing me down.
Yep.
Because the car in front of me is slowing down. Let's stay. Like, am I good?
You're good. Yeah. I mean, I would be ready to take over.
Right. So we don't fall to our fiery death.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I've done this ramp before, but autopilot.
This does not feel right. Like, I can tell. Like, this would take a little while to get used to it.
Sure.
Oh. Wow. Wow.
Okay, that was at the same time the most amazing experience in my life and the most terrifying. It was it's really hard to explain what it's like being in a car and not having it's full autopilot, not just like adaptive cruise control, speed up, slow down. Like, you saw it take turns, take exits. You want to change lanes, you hit the turn signal. And it waits for a hole, and then it changes lanes, one lane. The craziest thing, this thing even has a feature that if let's say you have a house, because if you have this car, you probably have a really big house with a detached multi-car garage and a long lane. And if you live in a house like that, like you do, you can, on your phone, tell your car to come pick you up at your door. It backs out of your garage, drives down your lane, and is waiting for you at your door. Right? Like, oh, hey, what's up, future? Like, craziest. There's video on the internet of a guy, and this probably isn't the safest thing, sitting in the back seat of the car while it drives him down the interstate. Probably not real safe, but nonetheless possible. I mean, it was the craziest thing. I was at such a loss for words, because the weirdest thing was just being out of control of where it was taking me. And granted, there is, you can kind of take over at any point, but just sitting there, as it took this curve at that was like Mopac in Austin, right? I was just picturing loses control and drives off the side of the road. Like being out of control. I don't know how many of you are control freaks a little bit like myself. Giving up control to something else and it taking me down the road someplace was the strangest, most unnerving feeling. And what's crazy is that's a great example of what our habits are like. We're actually giving up control of some of our decisions, some of the direction of our life to our habits without even realizing it. Many of our habits actually take control of our future and our direction. And they fully take control, and we just give up control to our habits without even realizing it. You see, your life actually has an autopilot, and it's called your habits. Your habits are the autopilot of your life. And what we're going to talk about today, your goal today is to walk away learning how you can fire your autopilot. We are all going to fire our autopilot. As much as we all want a Tesla, and as fun as that was, in life, we need to learn to fire our autopilots. How do we learn to address our habits, look at them, and decide how we're going to fire those things? And I want to be honest with you guys right now. It's incredibly difficult to change your habits. Way harder than you expect. If you've ever had a New Year's resolution to change a habit, and then come February, you're kind of like, eh. You know, you watch gyms get packed in January and they dwindle in February, March. It's because habits are so incredibly difficult to change. In fact, there was one prophet, Jewish prophet that lived, and at this time that Israel was making bad decisions, and they continued to make bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. They were rejecting God. They were doing things that they didn't really want to do. And this prophet, writing thousands of years ago, he says this, and we find this in the book of Jeremiah 13. He says, "And still you will not change. Can an Ethiopian change his skin? Can a leopard change its spots? It seems just as unlikely that you will change your ways and do good when you are so used to doing evil." And here's the key: it has become such a part of you. It had become this habit of doing things they know they shouldn't do. It had become so ingrained of them, it was almost like it became a part of them. It became so ingrained to make those decisions, to do those things. It had become habit for them to choose things that were things that they didn't want to do, that they didn't want to acknowledge God. So let me ask you a question. Where in your life has your autopilot began to engage in areas that you know it shouldn't, that you wish it wouldn't engage in that way? What are some habits that you have that you wish you didn't have? Maybe it's something like smoking or drinking or staying up too late or binge watching something, or maybe it's your study habits and you wish you had really good study habits, but what happens is you start studying and then you end up binge watching Making a Murderer for like all night long, and you just get sucked in, right? And these habits that you wish you didn't have, and then all of a sudden it's 3 a.m. you're like, I should have gone to bed hours ago, and it's become this habit. Or maybe it's stuff that you know that you should do. You know you should wake up early and work out. You know you should do this or that. But laziness has become a habit. Making negative decisions, treating your spouse poorly, flying off the handle in anger. It's just become this habit that you have. It's so ingrained, it's become a part of you. I want to tell you something. Our habits have this way of determining the direction of our life. And in fact, there's a pastor, an author, his name's Andy Stanley. I think he put it best. He said this, he said that direction, not intention, determines your destination. You see, many of us don't want these habits. Many of us don't want to do those things. We want to change. We have all the best intention in the world. But guess what? Direction, not intention, determine your destination. You see, if you wanted to go to Dallas, right? You go down 123 and you hop on I-35 headed south. Are you going to end up in Dallas? No. I mean, you might really, really, really want to go to Dallas. I don't know why you would, but let's say, hypothetically, you really, really want to go to Dallas and you get on I-35 south, you're going to end up in San Antonio every single time. Every time. No matter how much your intention is to go to Dallas, you're going to go to I-35 South, which is going to take you to San Antonio every time. And sometimes we have this, well, I'm going to do this, but this isn't going to be a habit, just this once, and I'm going to go ahead and jump on I-35 South, thinking that it's somehow going to get you to Dallas. and you've continued to do X thing and it keeps getting you Y results. And you think that, oh, maybe this time it's going to be different. But I'm telling you, every time you head in that direction, it's going to determine your destination. So the question is, how do you fire your autopilot? I mean, how on earth do you fire your autopilot? How do you get to a place where you're like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore? We see, before you can understand how you fire your autopilot, how you can change these habits, you really have to understand how habits work. You have to understand the process of habits and how habits are ingrained in us and how they kind of take control and how they're reinforced. So I'm going to go ahead and give us a little description of how habits work. And I got this from an incredible book called The Power of Habit. As a church staff, we read this book several months ago. This is an incredible, incredible book. It says why we do what we do in life and in business. So I've got 2 copies and I'm going to give them away. And here's how it works. How many of you raise your hand? And if you don't want the book, don't raise your hand. Want the book and you made some New Year's resolutions? Go ahead and raise your hand, okay? Going to raise your hand? Okay. Keep them up if you told someone what your resolutions are. Told someone what your resolutions are, okay? Keep them up. This is going to limit it a little bit more. If you wrote them down. How many told someone and wrote them down? All right. Okay. You guys are in the front row. You ladies can come on down. I would throw them, but I'd be nervous that I'd hurt you. Yep. Anna, you can come down. You can go ahead and give them a round of applause. You can go ahead and pass those out. There you go. It's an awesome, awesome book. I'd really encourage you to read that. Really, really powerful. So Charles Duhigg, the author of that, talks about habits, and what he says is that habits form a loop, a habit loop. And how it works, and before I start writing, I want to tell you I have the handwriting of a 3rd grader, okay? It is not my resolution. I'm okay with it because I type things. And when I misspell them, a little red line goes under them. So if I misspell, I'm praying a line shows up. Okay, so the first part of any habit is there's a cue, okay? So we have a cue, and that's longer. Okay, so we have a cue, all right, something also known as a trigger, something that kind of triggers a habit. And what that does is that leads up here to the routine, okay? So you have the routine, and then what happens, that's the habit, that's the thing you actually do, and then that routine leads to the, I'm going to run out of room, reward, okay? So this is a habit loop. You have a cue, the habit or routine, and then there's the reward. It's kind of the reason that you are doing the habit. So let's give you an example. So let's say, let's talk about a smoker. That's one of the examples it uses. So your cue might be nicotine, kind of a craving or something. So you got like a face, his eyes, and he's like, he's having a craving. Little squiggly lines, I don't know, and he's not happy. Okay, so he's having a craving, right? He's like, and then it goes to the routine. The routine is the actual habit. This is a cigarette. It didn't get smaller on the ends, trust me. Okay, so that is the routine, right? He smokes the cigarette, and then the reward is the feeling you get afterwards. And he just became Asian, all right? And that, he's happy. He's like, right? Like, this is how it works. Another way it might work is, let's say you have a craving. One of the examples in the book, it talks about brushing your teeth is actually a habit. How many of you, maybe don't answer this, think about brushing your teeth in the morning? Some of you need to think about it more. But many times it just happens. It's this habit that we have in our life. The cue when you wake up is that fuzzy feeling on your teeth. The carpet you get on your teeth, that's, feel it? And you got that taste in your mouth, that's actually the cue. They've actually done studies on this. That's the cue. The routine is then brushing your teeth, right? And the reward, you know what the reward is? It's that minty taste in your mouth. It's that feeling you get. And it's crazy. They actually did studies, this is kind of in-depth in the book, that some toothpaste, in fact, toothpaste is, you know how you brush your teeth and it gets all foamy? You know, and that actually doesn't have to happen. They put extra chemicals in your toothpaste to foam like that. It doesn't naturally foam. But what they found out is when you brushed your teeth and it didn't foam like that, it didn't give you the same sensation, the same reward, and people weren't brushing their teeth. So I think it was the 50s or something, they started adding that as a study, And like teeth brushing habits like skyrocketed over the next few years just because they had to dial in what that reward was, that feeling afterwards. And what's so crazy for me, anybody else like this? For me, one of my habit loops is the cue is my phone, right? Like if my phone, if it has like one of these apps down here, if it has a little red thing next to it, like that, I start getting nervous, right? Like I get this craving, like I have to make that red thing go away. That's my cue. And then my reward is actually checking that. That's a really bad phone. It's probably a Microsoft phone. Is actually checking my email. It's checking the thing. It's reading the email. And do you know what the reward is? Well, I'm going to do a really bad job drawing this. That is a paper airplane going whoosh. The sound that it makes when I send the email, whoosh. And then when I check it off, I have a task app that I do all my tasks on. And sometimes if I have the noise off on my computer or my phone, when I check something off, it goes ding. I'll turn the noise on just so that it goes ding. And I get that reward, right? So we all have these loops, these habit loops in our life. And what's really crazy and really what can be really sinister is this reward. What happens is it creates an expectation for the cue. It creates this desire, this expectation. When that cue comes, you want that reward. And it just keeps feeding itself, and it becomes this habit loop. So the question is, how do you interrupt this? How do you change this? How do you do this? How do you actually change your habits? Well, here I've got some good news for you. You ready? It's going to be life-changing. To change your habits, all you have to do is stop. Have a good day. Love you. Later. All right? Like, I know what you're thinking. You're like, Dan, you're an idiot. Like, okay, sure, stop, right? Like, we've tried that before. We've tried to stop. But here's what I mean. I don't mean actually just like stop doing it, because again, changing our habits are incredibly difficult. What I mean is to actually become mindful of these things. One of the quotes from the book, and I love this, there's a sociologist, and he said this. He said, it seems ridiculously simple, but once you're aware of how your habit works, once you recognize the cues and the rewards, you're halfway to changing it. So what do? You stop, you slow down, you think about it. It talked about people who had habits of chewing their fingernails, and what would happen many times, they'd get a little hangnail on their nail, just a little imperfection, and they'd feel that, and that was the cue. And the reward, the first thing they did was went to chew on it. They said, to change that, what you do is you become mindful of the cue. You realize, here's the cue, and I know it's going to happen. So they said, do something else. It's actually the stimulation on their fingertips that's the reward. So they said what they did, put their hands in their pockets or rub your fingertips on your jeans, something like that. You're changing, you're becoming mindful of these different things. So the first thing that can help you to change your habits is to just become aware. It's practicing this idea of mindfulness. It's settling in, becoming aware of your environment, becoming aware of what's happening in your mind, what's happening around you. It's slowing down. It's going, okay, hold on. I'm going to back up. Instead of just like the phone ding and I instantly grab it. No, slow down. Hold on. What's happening around you? Your kids are here. Your friends here. You're sitting across from someone having coffee. You see, you have to slow down. See, Paul actually wrote this to his protege, Timothy. Paul was an early Christian and church planter, and he wrote about this idea, and he wrote it to this protege of his, Timothy, and he said this, opponents must be gently instructed in the hope that God will grant them repentance, leading them to a knowledge of the truth. We can go on to the next slide, but he's talking about people who aren't choosing God or are making negative decisions. They must be gently instructed. He said, and they will, here you go, come to their senses and escape the trap of the devil, who has taken them captive to do his will. What do they need to do? They need to come to their senses. They need to become aware of their environment. It's this mindfulness. It's this slowing down, not just stopping like, hey, stop the habit loop, completely stop. This is actually incredibly difficult because this actually rewires the circuitry in our brain. It's incredibly difficult to just change it. So we have to stop, become mindful, realize that we're creatures of habit, and slow down so that we can stop and realize what the cues are, and what the routines are, and what the rewards are, so we can find ways to stop them. The next step, Second thing you're to do. So first, stop. Number 2, replace your habits. Replace your habits with habits. Replace your habits with habits. You see, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is you actually, scientists and psychologists and sociologists believe that you cannot stop a habit. That's the bad news. The good news is that you can replace habits. You can change your habits. So what we need to do is replace our bad habits with good habits, whether it's checking your phone, whether it's smoking, whether it's staying up late, whatever, all these habits, these things are ingrained in us. So how can we replace them with other habits? Again, Paul, he's writing about this, and I love this passage, and we're going to dial into this a little bit, so don't let this just fly by. So the book of Ephesians, to the church in Ephesus, he writes them this letter. It's this church, and they're acting, and things are happening, and he writes them this letter, and here's what he says. Anyone who's been stealing must steal no longer. Stop, right? But Paul goes on. But must work, doing something useful with their own hands, that they may have something to share with those in need. So let's think about this. Let's slow down. So what does Paul say? So someone who's stealing, probably not good. It's not good to take something that's not yours from someone else. So you need to stop. But it's not just stop. He now gives them something to replace. What does he say? What do you use? What's the cue? What do you use to steal with? What things do you use? Your hands, right? Your hands steal things. So what does Paul say? He says, doing something useful with their own hands. Doing something useful. And again, the key here is with their own hands. Paul is being very specific. And why? He's trying to replace this reward. What is the reward when you steal? Again, many psychologists say that it's actually not the thing that is stolen that is kind of the reward. It's actually the rush. It's the feeling that people get. I mean, we see incredibly wealthy people, you'll see it in the news every so often, stealing things. And you sit there and you go, what? Like, really? It's that adrenaline rush. It's that feeling that you get after having stolen it, I've heard, that reinforces these things. So what does Paul say? Do stop and then do work with their own hands so that they might have something to share with someone in need. And they get that feeling. So that reward, the cue is there, they change the routine and they tweak the reward. And then all of a sudden, they realize when I do good, when I share, when I make something with my hands, when I serve someone and help them, I get this feeling that's better than that. And they just change their habit with another habit. So that's our second thing that we're supposed to do is change our habits with other habits. And lastly, number 3, to change your habits, change your company. To change your habits, change your company. Another author is writing letters to churches, and he says that don't be deceived that bad company corrupts good character. I remember being a young person in high school and reading that verse and going, oh my gosh, like good character can become corrupted by bad company. And it really hitting me as a young person and realizing that. One of the mentors in my life, I'll never forget it. She said it so much, it's like ingrained in my brain. And she said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. So if you want to change your habits, let me tell you one thing you're going to have to do. You're going to have to change your company. You're going to have to change the people you're around. And this isn't just Bible. Let me tell you, science backs up many of these things. And I love one of my favorite quotes from the book, Power of Habit. I'm going to go ahead and put it up now. It says this, for a habit to stay changed, people must believe change is possible. And most often, that belief only emerges with the help of a group. And then, he says, community creates belief. You see, what we're doing here this morning, when we gather together, and we talk about these things, and we talk about life, this isn't just an exercise in futility. This isn't so that you can like check this off on your weekly list and say, God, aren't you happy? See, I went to Sunday, I dropped a little something in and I did my thing. No, we do this. We gather like this so we can encourage one another. So you can know, hey, listen, change is possible. And then if together, if we all begin to believe, hey, listen, I can change those things in my life that more than just bad habits, because let's get honest. Some of you in this room, it's not just bad habits. It's not just working out. There are things in your life that you're doing that are destroying your life. The way you treat your spouse, the way you treat your children, how you're flying off the handle in anger, your drinking problem, you don't think it's affecting you, whether it's looking at porn or whether it's you're entertaining the ideas of an affair. I don't know where you're at in this room, but some of the things that are happening, they're not just, it's just a habit. We need to change. I don't want you to sit there today and think about like, oh yeah, I kind of slurp my cereal. I need to change that. What could be the cue? And it's deeper than that. And the beautiful thing is that community, this gathering here together, believing alongside other people, creates belief. I want you to know that change is possible. That issue in your life doesn't have to keep being an issue. You don't have to go around that mountain anymore. Change is possible. I don't care how long that's been in you. I don't care how long you've been making that decision. Change is possible. And you know what some of you need to hear this morning? Listen, God created us in this beautiful, amazing way, and He gave us these complex brains. And through common grace, He's allowed us to make these discoveries about how the brain works and how reward cycles work and how habits work. And listen, we can change and we can make a decision and we can get on a new direction. We can start heading up I-35 North. But for some of you, what you need to hear this morning is that if you think that on your own you can change, you're wrong. Man, some of you have tried to change by yourself on your own for too long. And it's time to ask God for help. Say, God, I've tried everything. I don't know what else to do. But God, I need you. I need you to step into my life. I need you to make a difference. I need your grace. Man, it's crazy. You know what the authors of the Bible said? The authors of these letters said when they were writing, they would say things like this. That, listen, do not be deceived. You can't be tempted beyond what you can bear. God is faithful, and He'll provide a way out every time you're tempted. Every time. That it's His grace that teaches us to say no to temptation. You have everything you need for life and godliness. I want you more than anything to believe that change is possible this morning. And yes, these things will help. Absolutely, practice these things. These are things we've learned through common grace. Absolutely, they will reinforce things. But there is this other part of life. Sometimes it's hard to explain. It's hard to understand how it works. But what you need to do this morning is surrender yourself to God. God, I want you to help me. I want to change this area of my life. Here's what it is. I admit I've got a problem, and I need your help to change. Amen? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to close in prayer here in a moment. The band's going to play one final song. And while that song plays, I want you to process, to think about your life, what things need to change. Ask God to become a part of that change and to come into your heart and to help you work through these things. And then, this is important, tell someone. It's the scariest part. But I want to tell you one other thing that these authors wrote is they said that, listen, that to change your habits, it says, confess your sin, confess those things that want to change. Sometimes this word sin hangs us up. Confess our sin one to another so that you might be healed. And we're already forgiven. You connect with God and God will forgive you of your sin, no problem. But how you can get healing is confess your sin one to another. So step one is you just admit it before God. You sing the song with us, join with us, and then pray, God, give me the strength to tell someone. Give me the strength to start walking this out, to confess my sin to someone else so that I can get healing, because I'm done. I'm done with this issue. I'm done with this problem. And it's got to change. Let's pray. God, I thank you so much. God, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. God, that you made us in such a way that, God, all these things that they're true. This is helpful. These are things that we can apply to our life and is really going to make a difference. But God, I pray for the person in this room right now. That, yeah, they could glaze over it and say, oh, I've got this bad habit. There's this thing. Yeah, I kind of wish I didn't do this. But in their heart, they know that that is destroying their life. It's something that has the potential to ruin their marriage. It's ruining their finances. It's destroying their relationships. God, I pray that you would speak to them right now. They would be challenged to make a change this morning, to stop, to become mindful of what it is. And then to learn by your grace as you teach them to say no to temptation, as you provide a way out every time they're tempted, God, that you would help them replace those habits with other things. Maybe they need to do drastic things and charge their phones in other rooms and get rid of things and confess to other people. And they do whatever it takes to change those habits, to change those things. And then they get into a community of shared belief. Someone that can stand alongside them, that they can confess to, that can encourage them, help them be healed. And may we be a church that comes alongside other people. It says, hey, listen, you can change. You can do this. Change is possible. We thank you for all these things. We pray this in your name. Amen.